indeed quite a 2015. Since after leaving the Congress of the People, I have aligned myself with a new political organization called the Alliance of Independence. I'm currently the interim political leader of that political party, and we are actively looking at our movements, particularly in light of these rather stunning general elections 2015, where every single day presents a new challenge, a new dynamic, and it's a never-ending saga. So we're looking forward to being part of that dynamic in whichever way we feel best for those persons who feel they are not necessarily represented by one or the other. It is an increasingly large group. The last poll data showed that the group shifted from 33% increasing, I think it's like 37% now, so that the group is growing larger and larger. The thing about it is that even though the group continues to grow of those persons who feel that they don't really feel represented by one of the two major political entities, is that this group also comprises of so many different segments that it is a very difficult group to really gauge. Whereas you have the other two political entities knowing that they have specific persons or groups that they can identify as a base, the undecideds are divided into those who are generally undecided and who may swing with one or the other. It may comprise of those who just are fence sitters. It may comprise of those who are not going to vote at all in these coming elections, as well as it may comprise of those who would like to give a third, so to speak, entity some type of a chance, so that the undecided group is always a very segmented group and a group of thinkers who would like to believe that their decision would provide the push that one of the major political entities would need to get into office. And in fact, it's true. Without the support of the undecided, neither political entity will be in office come 2015. It places us in a unique position. And many people our experiences thus far has been very interesting. And as I mentioned, because we live in such a politically dynamic country, you never know what's going to happen from today to tomorrow. I mean, just recently I was privileged to be invited to the inauguration of the president of Guyana. So I was out of the country for 2 days, and I came back and there's so many different things happening within 2 days that is unbelievable, that has the potential to change the political landscape once again. So that for those persons, the Alliance of Independence sees this as a fantastic opportunity to really contribute to the changing political dynamic. We have always said that we do not see either of the major political entities as our enemies. We see them, yes, as political opponents. We may have different ideologies, but certainly we're not enemies, because at the end of the day, we still have to hold out hope that we all really just want what's best for Trinidad and Tobago. And so that is why we are framing our election trajectory in one which we are prepared to listen to what everyone has to say, and we have been doing that. We have been having conversations with everybody across the board. Likewise, we are prepared to discuss what we have to offer. One of the things that we will be offering is a non-partisan manifesto, where we are collating a manifesto of policy perspectives that have been presented to us by a number of different professionals, a number of different persons who may not necessarily want to be politically aligned, but who just would come with us and present us with ideas that would be workable ideas and workable solutions, and not necessarily based on which political party they're affiliated to. We can also boast of having one of the most robust national security and safety policy perspectives, which we call Project Hope 75, which will be launched very soon. And what we do know is that even though the Alliance of Independence is a minority in this coming election, this minority is certainly going to be a priority. In the current framework, there are 3 political women who are at the leadership helm of their respective parties. You have Kamala Persad-Bissessar, Nicole Dyer Griffith, interim political leader of the AOI, and there's Chrislyn Moore, who's the interim political leader of the Tobago Forwards. One of the major differences that we have been speaking about quite openly is exactly that we do not see our political opponents as the enemy. That for far too long we have resided in a population where there is political divisiveness, and you see an opponent a political opponent more so as the enemy. We are not the owners of all things great. We are not the owners of all great ideas. We have to work with people in order to get the job done. And that is our philosophy, that we recognize that other political parties, other political opponents may have good. Likewise, they may have things that are not so good. We would like to work with you to ensure that the good that we have, the good that you have, will redound to the benefit of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. I am not sure about you, but I know I am very wary of the political bacchanal. I am tired of hearing political drama. I am tired of hearing about different gates, email gate, nipple gate, this gate, that gate. I do not want to hear about that. I am interested in what are we going to do for the betterment of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And that is where you will hear the Alliance of Independents speaking to. That is where you will hear that we are interested in hearing what the other political parties have to say about exactly that. What are you going to do for the people of Trinidad and Tobago that will redound to the benefit of those people? And not necessarily who's worse off than who did what when they were there. I think we're tired of that. And the other thing that I'm a little bit concerned about, in addition to the political rhetoric that is growing a little bit wary, but it is the level of divisiveness that we are seeing creeping into our society. I am not sure about you, but I have not felt such a level of divisiveness, and it's certainly of concern, and it's something that we need to change. We need to change that direction, and we need to go back to the knowledge that as a people of Trinidad and Tobago, there is a day after the election, and the day after the election, whomsoever is appointed as the Prime Minister is the Prime Minister for everybody in Trinidad and Tobago, and the government is the government for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And we need to keep that in mind as we continue our electoral campaigning and our electioneering.
How old are you now? You're talking about age?
There is everything. I have given all of myself, or most of myself, to the people of Trinidad and Tobago, and that is the one thing that I keep to myself. Okay. That's mine.
So I was just getting at your long history and working towards where you are now. If you have a philosophy you live by, personally and professionally.
I have many philosophies. I think my philosophies are like me. They change from day to day. And that I think is my guiding philosophy. One is that I believe in God, and without Him, my life would not have been what it is today. And I think that guiding philosophy takes me in every different direction and really provides a buffer from day to day. The other major philosophy is that life is made up of so many different compartments that you should not allow yourself to be stuck in one, that you should explore life and explore all that it has to offer. So those are the two main guiding philosophies for me, and why it is you would see that there are so many different parts to me as a person. You know, there's a part from way back to being a registered nurse to Miss Trinidad and Tobago, to being in corporate world, to being in the oil and gas industry, to being a communications professional, to going into politics, and the list goes on and on. Even before all of that, to being involved in fashion performance, even being involved in party time as a teenager. So, you know, there's so many different parts of me, and I think that all of that credits to who I am today. Nicole Dyer Griffith is continuously evolving and finding out who she is.
What was the best time and what was the worst time?
The best time. I've had so many best times and I've had so many worst times. It's difficult to identify. I think one of the best times would definitely be the birth of my son. Many people know him as the kid because that's what he's been called ever since day one. It certainly was one of my greatest accomplishments to move from being just me to being in the role of a mother and really understanding what my mother had to undergo for all those years. It really is a transformative type of experience, and it certainly will go down as one of my best times. One of my worst times, I think one of the there's so many difficult times. I've had many, many challenges, but with each challenge, I have managed to come out by the grace of God. I think one of the worst times would have been when I was thrown out of a moving vehicle and almost crushed by a truck on a highway. During that experience immediately after Miss Trinidad and Tobago, because that was life and death staring you straight in the face. So I think that could go down as one of the worst. Well, it was immediately after Miss Trinidad and Tobago, and I had recently taken up an appointment at Petrotrin in their public relations department. And I had this little vehicle, a Suzuki Swift, a blue one, that I could have sworn was a possessed vehicle, because anything that could have gone wrong did go wrong in that car. It never gave me a chance. But I was driving down the highway, and the car started swerving and ran off the road. And it went straight into a ditch on the highway. Nobody came to help. Everybody just passed, slowed down, watched, and went on their merry way. And so here am I in a ditch with this vehicle, and one person came to my assistance, and he helped me, and he helped push the car back onto the road. And after that, he asked me if he can get a lift down to where I was heading, which I thought was absolutely fine. He was the only person to help. And so he jumped in the car, and we were driving down the street, and he started getting a little fidgety, and eventually tried to take the vehicle, commandeer the vehicle from me. And I mean, in the midst of thinking, what is going on after having that traumatic experience of almost running off the road to this? And so we're fighting for the steering wheel of the vehicle, and eventually with all of that, he just leaned across, opened the car door, and pushed me out. And there I was, rolling on the highway, jumping out or being thrown out of a vehicle at 60 miles per hour, raising up my head to see a big truck coming down the road, have to roll out of the way of that big truck. Eventually, another car, two cars passed, which is unbelievable, and a taxi driver stopped. And it was only when I heard the screams from the persons in the taxi that I realized that I was all bloodied and all over, and they lifted me up, took me in the taxi, and took me to the police station.
What was growing up?
Absolute happiness. I had a pretty good childhood.
Mother and father?
They had a mother, father. They separated coming down the line, but that happens. My childhood took me to almost every part of Trinidad, and then later on in Tobago. I was born in San Fernando. I spent some time in Point Fortin, and then I went to El Socorro, Ward Lane to be exact, then went off to Sunshine Avenue in San Juan. Then from there, moved to Belmont, and then Diego Martin. And then when I practiced nursing, I practiced it for a year in Tobago. So I am really a child of Trinidad and Tobago. I've hit almost every place. We've had our ups and downs. We've, had the peak points as well as the low points. And I could relate stories that can relate to everybody in Trinidad and Tobago, from the highest to the lowest, from the richest to the poorest. I have lived it. I can relate stories, and I can certainly relate to that. So when people sometimes hear me and see me talking and say, well, you don't know about poverty, or you don't know, I could tell you stories. Likewise, there's the opposite end of the spectrum. But I think that my mother always did whatever she had to do to ensure that we had a balanced, good childhood. We had the days where she would ensure that we were all dressed, and I'm sure many of you may share this experience where your mother ensures that you get dressed on a Sunday, you go to church, and then you come home, you're clean, and you have on new clothes, and you're out on the road playing. Those were the days when you would play in shoes and socks on the street, and everybody looked good and looked the part. I had excellent childhood days. I had two brothers who really prepared me to learn to defend yourself and to learn to fight really hard for whatever you needed, because of the experiences with those two very tough brothers. And they're around still today, and we have a very, very close-knit family, both extended, and the family that I have with me, my son and my husband. And, we just kind of continued that trajectory of close-knit family. And with families, you have all the little stress and the little ups and downs, as with every other family. But thank God that, we always managed to overcome.
And father?
He unfortunately passed away. Because, as I mentioned before, my life has always been so transformative. It has never been static. I think if we were to look at breakthrough, there are many different periods when I had little breakthroughs. Different levels of breakthrough, because you could look, if we were to go all the way back to nursing, one of the main breakthroughs in that era was the opportunity for me to really see the practice of nursing in its most beautiful sense when I worked in the psychiatric department in Tobago Regional Health Authority. That psychiatric department and what they had managed to do at that point in time certainly really demonstrated what nursing in its purest sense was about. And so because my batch, I trained with a batch called BN5, that was when the Ministry of Health was now starting to really roll out the regional health authority model and to look at that model being adapted into the Trinidad and Tobago framework of health, because that model was used by the British. And the NHA. So we were almost, they called us the textbook nurses because our training was really like degree training, and much of our experience was based on the academic side of nursing, but particularly in the scenario of being able to transform and translate that academic type background into real nursing practice and theory was certainly very beneficial and transformative. And that is that era. I mean, in each era of my life, I can go with different stories that can be seen as that. More recently, though, one really delved with a note that I got recently, where a young woman that I really don't know sent me a note stating that she's been following my life and my journeys and that my life story and my life experiences really inspired her to go on to do something that really was of benefit to her. And she understood that you don't necessarily have to live the same way every single day of your life, that there's so many different things that you can do and different opportunities that you can open up to yourself. And, you know, God gave us the opportunity to do that. And nobody should ever allow themselves to be streamlined or placed in one box, because there's just so many different boxes that could be opened. The biggest lesson that I have learned is to love yourself and to do what you think is right because it is the right thing to do. It's that simple. And sometimes I wonder why it's so difficult for people to understand that. It's just that simple. Do the right thing. It's the right thing to do. Absolutely. My life, based on where I am at currently, I have always said that I have lived life at least 3 times over. And if it is I were called away from this earth today, I would leave being satisfied that I have lived life. And I think I've lived it pretty well. There are times and things that I may have done that, you know, like everybody else, you feel, But I think in the main, I have lived life pretty well, and I look forward to whatever else God has in store for me. I'm afraid of failure. I am driven by success. I am driven by getting the job done. And some people have said that I am a perfectionist and I am a micromanager, of which I am. And I am mortally afraid of failure. When it comes, I have to deal with it and I have to smile whilst dealing with it, but I am mortally afraid of it. That's a good question. What's next for me, I think, comes immediately after the outcome of these elections, these upcoming elections. In terms of academia, I am considering accepting, because I was accepted to do my PhD, and I'm considering going in that direction, but that takes a lot of time, so I have to really think about it very carefully. I will be finishing my books that I have started. There is a rather dramatic thing that I was asked to do, which kind of takes me back into my performance days, that I am actively considering immediately after. And then, of course, I've always maintained that the Alliance of Independence will play a role in governance, so we'll see what happens next. One of the OMG moments was when I found out that I had a 10.5-pound baby. OMG. Yeah, he was huge. He was huge. Mm-hmm.
Is he a big boy now?
No. He's a little thing, but you know, he will grow into his own.